Welcome to the Aegance Offscript Podcast, where we talk to industry leaders who share their stories, insights, and lessons unfiltered and unscripted. I'm your host, Lawrence, and today I'm delighted to welcome Oliver Parkinson, the Chief Operating Officer at Sebenza Wi-Fi. Now, Sebenza is a South African platform that brings free Wi-Fi and a full digital engagement ecosystem to commuters on the move. Think taxis, think buses, and other public transport nodes. Beyond connectivity, Sebenza offers content, games, and a brand engagement layer that lets advertisers and companies reach a highly engaged, moving audience. Oliver, thanks so much for joining us.
Lawrence, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Excited for it.
Yeah, Oliver, great to have you on. So, I've positioned Sebenza to a certain degree, but, I'm sure you're able to provide a little bit more context around what it is that you guys do, areas of operations, etc.
Thanks, Lawrence. We're the market leader in South Africa in terms of the commuter Wi-Fi space. We've got a national footprint, and we've built our value proposition around our brands, marketing them to our commuters in a meaningful way. So very excited to sort of explore this and really delve into all the elements that we as a company have built in the last 6 years.
Amazing. So as the COO, you're steering the operational heartbeat of Sebenza. How do you define success in your role? And what's shifted most as the business has scaled?
Yeah. So I joined the company 4 years ago. My previous life, I was at Vumatel, very sort of fortunate to be there for 7 years and get stuck into the grind and the scale and what sort of the success story that was Vuma. And one of the co-founders, my brother-in-law, said to me, "Listen, we've got this amazing opportunity. We've fleshed out a small POC with 400 taxis, but we need someone that's going to really skyrocket and push that scale to a meaningful degree." And so I joined as a head of operations in 2022 with 400 taxis, and I think the way to really sort of push ourselves and showcase ourselves as Sebenza was getting to the national footprint. And at that point, you become meaningful to those parties that might sort of show interest. So as head of operations, very much entrenched within the installation efforts, the maintenance efforts, and making sure that our operations team, being the technicians and the way that we sort of managed the industry and the relationships we hold within it, were done in a meaningful way. Then 2 years ago, I was fortunate enough to be given the chief operations role. Now, Sebenza it's unique in the way that we've built our own platform. So we have our own development team that does all the work for us there. We've also got the operations. We install our hardware, we manage our hardware, we build out the firmware. And then lastly is the fulfillment of our brands and our clients onto the platform. So it's a sales engine that also needs to run there. So interesting space, because we're not just fixated on a development path, or we're not just fixated on a hardware path or the installations, but it's a multitude of all those different facets that I now am fortunate enough to still have my sanity during all those efforts. But it's been a great experience. I think operations exist across all those different departments.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like there's a lot of moving parts, and I'm always interested in the jump from being an operations manager to being a COO, so Chief Operating Officer. Is that purely by virtue of the company scaling? So suddenly there are more teams below you that you need to manage, and that's why it's precipitated the change in title? And then also, are you leaning into like the sort of strategic direction of the company too?
Yeah, so it's very much that. You're growing in a meaningful way to the point that, and as I said, you're getting the interest from the possibility of shareholders, right? So we were fortunate enough to be a part of the D&I group end of 2023, and what comes with that then is the expectation of scale, the expectation of cost optimization, making sure that the strategy is really underpinned through everything that you do, and I think those first 2 years was me being relatively young. It's just understanding the engine that it is, and then having a full grasp on it and being able to then go, okay, how do I further broaden my reach and understanding, and make sure that the why of what we're doing and the vision that we have sort of is continued through our strategy and through the years that came after that.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. And can you think of any operational decisions that have had a meaningful impact over the sort of 4 years that you've been in the role?
Yeah. Take, for instance, the perception that most people hold over the taxi industry, right? So many people would cite it as a mafia sort of centric type of engine, and to certain degrees it is. But if your intent is to work within that environment, you've got to look towards how do you make sure that you can be valuable to that industry, and make sure that the standards of a successful business, which is making sure there's standardization through the agreements that you sign, and value perceived on both sides of that partnership as well, also need to be present. And I think that was our biggest turning point, is we've got a shareholder that's entrenched within the industry, but then also the legwork that we have to do. We have a relationship with 128 different associations, and standardizing that agreement to say it's not gonna sway to each of the different associations that we engage with, but this is Sebenza, this is who we are, this is the value that we give your commuters, and the value that we give your industry as well. And I think that was the biggest thing. I mean, to be taken seriously within an industry like that is massive. It's a huge piece of our success.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, massive achievement, and a massive entity within the South African economy, essentially. So to be, in tight with those guys and to be proving value for them is certainly sort of a badge, of honor worth wearing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Listen, it comes with its own stories. I don't think this is the forum to maybe touch on those, but yeah, if I can say that there's certain perceptions that would be proven true if I were to sort of allude to those, but it's a great ecosystem. It's a very well run and entrenched part of South African culture, and I think that's one of our core values or beliefs, is that we need to showcase that to everyone. We need to make sure that people understand that this industry moves 15 million people on a daily basis, and to be part of that engine is absolutely, it's so meaningful to us as South Africans and to the way that we operate. So yeah, it's been a wonderful journey.
And in terms of the current model, do you still see any, I don't want to call them inefficiencies, let's call them untapped potential? Do you see any untapped potential in terms of the current model?
I see inefficiencies that exist within the industry and the way they run things. And if we go back to sort of like the formalization of the taxi industry and associations, 1970, right? You go back and you have a look at the rank environment pictures from then, and the rank environment pictures current, and you see that it's an unchanged ecosystem. It's an unchanged environment. And I think what we want to do is we're a technology-based company, and really being able to showcase meaningful value through driving different ways of thinking and re-envisaging what that industry could be, and making sure that it is something that makes sense to our world today, as opposed to being sitting in the 1970s and just persisting as it did back then. Now, please don't get me wrong, like there has been a lot of changes that have happened, but it's great to know that we can also showcase that we've got forward thinkers and brilliant people in our company, and really showcase that within the industry as we still sort of scale and increase our sort of reach into the industry.
Something that many businesses wrestle with is trying to balance the mission or the vision with commercial growth. That's a very tricky friction that exists. I mean, how do you keep Sebenza's purpose, bridging the digital divide, aligned with the realities of scaling and profitability?
Yeah, straight off the bat, I mean, the cost of data in South Africa is ludicrous. You've got a MNO, a mobile network operator sort of ecosystem that is, I would say, has sat sort of pretty content with the world that they've created. Now, the onset of MVNOs, which is the mobile network virtual operators, has started to, and obviously a mandate or directive from the Competition Commission, trying to get to a point that there's a lot more competition that exists within that data environment. It still hasn't moved in the fashion that I thought it would. I mean, if I just speak to Celsi, I think there's 17 MVNOs that exist on their network, and a number of others that exist with MTN. And you would expect to see that start to reduce the cost of data, and therefore make it a lot more a lot easier for our commuters, for the mass market, to really sort of get involved in data purchasing and things. And it hasn't happened. And so our primary hook when we started was the fact that there's engagement for the redemption of Wi-Fi, and it still persists today because that market hasn't shifted. And I think understanding that leading digital inclusivity within that market is what we were born to do. And I think it still continues and still persists in making sure that we do it to a point that our commuters see value in it. I mean, last year we gave away around 90 million rands worth of data, and it just showcases that there's this need for it, and that's not just people that are wanting to go and stream and TikTok and everything like that. That's people who are wanting to get involved in courses to complete their matric certificates or whatever it is. There's meaningful value through what we are actually putting together and how we sort of rolling that out.
Yeah. So, it sounds like when there is tension between mission versus margin, that the mission trumps the margin on most occasions. Would you say that that's accurate?
It is accurate. It is accurate until you have a shareholder breathing down your neck. But I think the biggest thing is just making sure. And I mean, we can go into lessons learned later on. But I think it's very much making sure that the partnerships and the intent of the company is still underpinned by the why and what you're doing, and the intent behind your scale, your growth, and what you see as prominent values within the company.
Mm-hmm. I'd imagine with, as you said, 15 million travelers a day within the taxi association and the taxi network alone, your platform probably sits on a trove of engagement and mobility data. I mean, what's your approach to turning that into actionable insights for decision making or for client value?
I think in the data space, what you have today is real segmentation. You have your financial services, they collect in their data based on spend. You have your FMCG market, your fast-moving goods market, that is understanding loyalty, understanding their purchase value of their customers based on loyalties. Retailers, ShopRite, Checkers, insurance. So everyone is collecting their own data, right? And they're all sitting on their islands. And I think where Sebenza comes in is we are able to really link those islands together. We're commuters. That's what we focus on, right? So understanding where someone walks out of their house, they jump into a taxi, and where they're going to go and spend their money, or where they're going to go study, or where they're going to go work, and starting to bridge that divide, I think, is also quite exciting, because it means that you become an integral link to all these data sets that persist across segments, and I think that's one of the biggest values that we've really started to unlock is understanding our commuter base to that level that we can start to then provide meaningful insights to our clients to say, this is the propensity to spend, this is where they're spending, this is how they're moving, and then obviously that persists through a thematic calendar across the year, right? So it's exciting, and I mean, we receive sort of 200 to 300 million data points on a monthly basis, and really getting to a point that you make sure that is meaningful and something that you can correlate into value to your clients and to the brands that we service.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a huge number of data points that you need to manage on a monthly basis. I mean, assumedly you guys have quite a robust sort of data-driven culture internally, so that you can make the sort of strategic decisions and data-backed decisions accordingly. I mean, how are you able to manage that amount of data and get sort of real insights out of it?
You can't just do it with bums and seats. I mean, once upon a time, maybe that was the answer, but I think, let me just take the example. So, example of our taxi fleet. Now, this is the movable network. This is the network that is moving from A to B. They're servicing 8 to 10 trips a day, and so our biggest thing was, like if you want to maintain your network, you can't just do it by chasing down individual taxis. You've got to get a lot more clever with understanding them. So on a Monday to a Wednesday, you know that your taxis are leaving from a Baragwanath and Soweto and maybe binding, so sitting for the day, midday in Bree or Randburg, and so getting to the point that you can start to track the movement of those taxis. So we get pinged every 3 seconds by our devices. This is the location that they are in, and getting to the point that you can say, I need to send a technician to X spot, and I can do it because I know that over the past 3 months, this is the prevalence of that taxi to be binding in that spot there. So that's the first one. I mean, machine learning, ML on that data, and really understanding it and using AI-led intent to really start to get clever with the way that we manage our network. And then the next one is then understanding the data of our commuters, right? So a user comes into our platform. Their unique identifiers, their MSISD and their cell phone number. We send an OTP, we verify that user. But the engagement that user has throughout the platform, clicking on adverts, engaging with our micro apps, our different products and services, enriches that data set. That first party data is enriched through all of that. And you have to be clever with that. You can't just have someone's mind's going to explode if you just ask them to go and try and sort that and manage that data. Yeah. So you have to be clever with it, in short.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think their minds would explode, but you might find them jumping off the roof before the head explodes as well, because that's a lot to get through. So I'm pretty keen to dive into your partnerships, and obviously you've mentioned the taxi association, but similarly there are additional vehicle operators, hardware vendors. It's clear that the partnership model is central to Sebenza. I mean, I'd like to lean into the taxi association because, as you say, they do come with a bit of a reputation, and it's a bit of a gray area for the sort of the rest of the public in South Africa that don't use them as their sort of formal mode of transport. So, I mean, how do you approach building a sustainable relationship with your partners? But if you want to give us some insights into the taxi association as well, that'd be great.
What you need to understand, and this is startup environment going into Propel. I think that the thing that really compromises growth and forward movement is how you go and understand partnerships and how you go derive value from those partnerships, right? Our biggest strength is opportunity, but our biggest weakness is opportunity as well. We've got a small, nimble team, 52 staff, and it's my responsibility to make sure that we don't have a whiplash environment that persists within our company, that we're not focusing on a multitude of different projects that just we're trying to do 1,000 things, and those 1,000 things actually don't come to fruition because we just haven't focused on them. And so one of our biggest learnings, I think, over the course of my 4 years has been the understanding of partnerships, understanding the value you can get from them, and not just trying to run a little POC here, run a little POC there, but being intentional about what you're going to get out of it. And again, leaning back on the why, leaning back on the vision, and making sure that persists throughout it. We've burnt our fingers on a couple of partnerships, and I think it's so key within these startup environments to understand that you're seen as an exciting engine because of your nimbleness. And some partners you might engage with are much more cumbersome. And to really steer clear of being too optimistic towards partnerships, and really digging into them and understanding if they are viable, if they make sense, if they're going to be valuable to the actual operations of the company. Within the taxi space, it's the same thing. I mean, you've really got to understand that ecosystem, and the ecosystem persists at a rank. You've got a marshal, you've got a PRO, you've got the guys who corral the commuters and make sure that the taxis are moving in a meaningful way, that the loading is taking place at the right sort of time. And so our biggest thing is you need to make sure that the value is given to each one of those pieces of the ecosystem, so that Sebenza is not just seen as a way to derive value, monetary value, but that you're setting up the right sort of incentives through maybe learnerships that exist with associations, that Sebenza is seen as a vehicle through which you providing value outside of just monetary. And I think that's the biggest thing. The other one is, like, we are Suntaco's exclusive Wi-Fi connectivity partner. And Suntaco managed 90% of the industry. So call it 350,000 formal registered taxis and probably around 100,000 non-registered taxis. And to get that sentiment from them and to derive the value or provide the value that they see, and then to be able to sign an agreement with them along those lines is absolutely phenomenal. But I think we still got a lot of work to do to make sure that we continue to be front of mind for them. We continue to be that partner that really is unlocking true potential and helping them within the world that they exist in.
Yeah, I mean, fascinating. Out of interest, were you there for the sort of original meeting and pitch with your first taxi association?
I was not. It was held in Hammanskraal. It was with the late Jotham, the CEO of Suntaco, but very much in his compound. And you arrive there, and you sort of walk into a massive hall with a number of different taxi bosses and the heads, and you've got to talk to them and really stake your claim. So, exciting, definitely bone chilling, because it's a very scary environment to be in. But as I said, I mean, one of our shareholders very much entrenched within the taxi environment, and luckily, within any political sway that happens within that structure, he's still seen as relevant. So I think we've been very fortunate with regards to his input.
Yeah, I mean, I'd imagine being a fly on the wall in that hall must have been a very entertaining viewing. But I mean, you obviously have spoken about the value that you want to provide to your partners. But what does a partnership look like in practice when sort of collaboration goes both ways? Like, what is the perfect medium of partnership?
We've had partnerships where we've unlocked the opportunity within rank environments to go and do activations, to go drive lead conversion, to really cement a brand within that environment and showcase the fact that it's a partner-led initiative through Sebenza. And I'm not going to reference it, the actual name, but we've had a bank that we've been engaging with, and really, there was meaningful value that we both derived from it, based on bureaucratic structures and the long-winded sort of onboarding process that it just didn't deliver. And I think where you need to get to in terms of a partnership is there needs to be. It needs to play both ways. You need to be providing the value and giving the intent and showcasing what we can do because of our relationship with the industry. But then there needs to be something that comes back as well. And I think that intent and really making sure that there's movement and something that's meaningful to us as well needs to be present.
Imagine, well, you do operate in a space where advertisers are looking for sort of measurable return on investment. I mean, how do you differentiate Sebenza when you're pitching to brands or to agencies?
Quite simply, right now we're seen it as an awareness platform. It's awareness. Our intent now is really to get to the point that we change the behavior rails that persist on our platform from just being I'm coming into the platform to engage with media, products and services, get my Sebenza bucks, my digital currency, and then redeem for Wi-Fi, to actually closing the loop, starting to get to a point that you're creating a lead solution, you're creating a retargeting effort that really persists through any of their marketing that they take part in. And so really moving away from awareness to something more intentional that allows our users to trust us as Sebenza and the platform, and know that what we're putting onto the platform isn't something that's going to be taking advantage of those users.
Yeah, and are there any metrics or outcomes that tend to win the client over and win their confidence?
We had 5.3 million registered users on our platform. On a monthly basis, we get between 700 and 800,000 users engaging with our platform. We delivered 35 million impressions last month. And big things to really shout about, I think those numbers are staggering. And the next one is, I mentioned earlier, we have a movable network. So it's not just your commuters getting into a taxi that are engaging with the platform. Those taxis all go sit during your lull times when people are at work from 9 till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They're going and sitting at a binding station. So you've got 200 taxis, all with Sebenza. And so shoppers and other taxi drivers and anyone frequenting that sort of area is able to engage with that network. Same thing goes in the evening. They're going to go home or they're going to go sit at a depot. And so people start engaging, and we see a lot of meaningful engagement in those later hours. And it's people wanting to stream or wanting to go. I mean, one of the biggest ones we got was last year in November, was engaging with courses and really studying through courses because they had gone and redeemed their 500 megs, and they could do that in each evening.
I'd imagine that the connectivity and commuter media space it's a space that evolves very quickly. I mean, are you seeing any shifts in the competitive landscape? And if yes, are they shaping what your next moves are?
It hasn't been as forthcoming as I maybe thought it would be, right? So in 2014, Telkom announced that they would be running a Wi-Fi led initiative, and since then there have been a number of different competitors that we've come in contact with, and no one has got the commercial model right until we did. And I think that's the thing that piques everyone's interest, is that it's a data-free environment and it's underpinned by media as our primary revenue driver. And to date, I mean, well, last year, November, we took out one of the biggest Wi-Fi providers in South Africa, and we won the contract with Toyota Netstar. Now, the contract there is that Netstar put a device into every single Toyota vehicle on their fleet from 2019 or newer, and included in that is 60,000 quantum Sesfakiles as well. And so we've now changed our model, or changed our technology, so that it's not a server-side a device-side rendering. So we used to spend a lot of money on our devices to make sure that the CPU had capacity to actually manage it all. And now we're managing everything in the cloud. And so quite simply, you can take a entry-level device that Netstar has, pointed at our domain, and authenticate and manage everything into the cloud. And so all of a sudden, we don't have to go and install, but we can, at the click of a button, sort of propagate our solution onto that device and start making sort of a meaningful return on that device.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So, I mean, having a look at the competitive landscape, I mean, are you seeing competitors emerging? You've mentioned traditional telcos, maybe they haven't quite gotten it right. There's some mobility players out there, but are there any new sort of tech entrants that are trying to figure their way into the space?
Well, listen, Starlink still has a while to get here, and maybe that might sort of complicate things a bit. But I think where we started to see quite a bit of interest is in the F&O space, the fiber network operators. And not so much at a competitive level, but just they understand our model. They know it works. They can see sort of the revenue derived from it, and starting to understand what an ecosystem like that might look like, right? So you have a fiber network operator. They fulfill Wi-Fi in the house, fulfills the Wi-Fi in a commute. They get into that commuter gets into an office by there, and so what you start to do is steal away the market share that maybe your traditional MNOs would have on a prepaid sale, because you've got a Wi-Fi environment that persists throughout that entire day. And I think that's starting to become pretty real in our world, where there's a consolidation of those F&Os and interest into Sebenza as being that key piece that sort of persists that engagement throughout their day.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at Sebenza as a company, as a sort of sum of all its parts, what would you say is working really well within the company right now?
I think to any leader, right, or any manager, building a strong base of people that know exactly what they need to do within their department, and making sure that the biggest thing when you get into a scale world, and I got this through Vumatel, and I really learned from it, and I was intentional about really building out something that sort of made sure that a culture persists, and that the right people are brought in that understand scale, understand the need to think broader, think bigger, and I think that needs to, if you want to get to that propel phase, and if you want to become something that is really meaningful in as a company, you need to understand the right people that you need to bring into that company, and never lose sight of the fact that even though you need to get boatloads of staff and bums and seats, that the right sort of onboarding and vision and the buy-in to what that company's end goal is persists. And I think where we succeed is that our technology stack is brilliant. We've done a very good job of building that out, and we know it through and through, and it's ours. It's owned by us. Where I think there's work to be done is on the IoT space, the Internet of Things, and really how do we manage ourselves as a server-side rendering and explore sort of different features and facets that really help us meaningfully in the cloud space. And then on the operations side, it's understanding that 3 years' time, 2.5 years' time, we need to be in 50,000 vehicles. So how do you change the inference away from I'm chasing down a taxi to maintain it, or I'm chasing down a taxi to install it, to makes a lot more sense to a astronomical scale number like 50,000. So I think, in short, is technology. I think we're doing brilliantly. In our sales team, absolutely killing it. I mean, it's a new product to sell to any agency, to any brand, and they're doing a phenomenal job. But I think where we need to really think about intently the next steps is on our operations side, and then the IoT side. How do we get more clever? How do we manage ourselves through AI-led initiatives that really help us deliver meaningful value to our commuters, and a unique experience that is that cannot be seen anywhere else.
If you look back over your journey with Sebenza, what has surprised you most? I mean, that could be either about the market or the business itself.
Straight off the bat, I'd say the taxi associations. I came in with this idea in my mind that it was an industry that couldn't be swayed and was rigorous in its own structures. Then I think the next one is, we had an instance with a partner where the C-suite really said, this is the goal, we're going to go for it. And much to the dismay of maybe the operational pieces within that company that maybe had cited certain issues that they saw, it was just this I don't think it's arrogance. I think there's just this confidence that it will work, it will be done in a way that's meaningful. And I think that's the other thing that really surprised me, is that these bigger engines all seem to operate just with a checkbox. I'm happy to go for it, and let's pull the trigger. Whereas there needs to be a deeper dive into understanding operationally, understanding commercially, like how does this all evolve, and what does that look like over time? And so I think that's my biggest thing, is that it's still led the top of the funnel, just going get it done, as opposed to really interrogating and understanding a partnership to the nth degree, so that you can make sure that over 5 years you're deriving the right sort of value, and the forecast and Excel spreadsheets are actually meaningful to what you see real time.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. And if you could, let's say, rewind 2 years, is there anything that you would do differently?
Yes, absolutely. I think trying to steer clear of all the exciting opportunities and all the excitement around entrepreneurial spirit and the linking of different businesses that run parallel to you. I think really just digging into it properly and going, that vision, that why has to persist through all of these. If there's any sort of startups listening to this, or any entrepreneurial spirit behind your audience, I think which I'm sure there is. It's just really interrogate the intent of what you're trying to do, and make sure that it always persists within everything that you do. I mean, we're 6 years down the line, and these are the lessons I've learned sort of 2 years ago. And I think that's the biggest thing. You're nimble. you're forward thinking, you've got this drive and this insatiable hunger to deliver on something that's meaningful to you. Make sure that persists within your company, and make sure that every single person in that company buys into it. I think that's one of the things I would change.
Yeah, that's some really sound advice. I think it also comes down to learning when to say no, which is a really tough place to reach when you're a founder or an entrepreneur and you're just so desperate to, get the machine going, start moving forward.
Yeah.
You just will take any opportunity that comes your way because it propels you forward. But as you say, you do reach a point where maybe the vision or the mission starts to get a little bit blurred.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I think everyone should understand that it's a valiant effort. I mean, the entrepreneurial spirit in South Africa is massive. There's so many companies doing that, but just make sure that you're not put in a position that your nimbleness and ability to execute in a meaningful and fast-paced fashion is not being taken advantage of.
And Oliver, looking ahead, what excites you most about where Sebenza and the sort of wider community connectivity space is heading?
So, digitization of the industry. It's an industry that is cash based. The taxi industry hasn't been formalized in that fashion. There's not and I think Sebenza plays a very good part in for the last 6 years, getting the access, being able to know the partners, the right sort of fashion in terms of intently moving into that environment and making sure that it's not a top-down led approach from the Syntaco structures, but rather a bottom-up grassroots ecosystem and making sure there's value within that world. So I think Sebenza, we sit in a very fortunate position that there are so many different so many different companies that are really trying to crack that space, and our group company, the D&I, are intently looking to really find the right partner that would help sort of create a solution or have a solution, a white labeled solution, and really roll that out in a meaningful fashion. I think that's what's most exciting to us, is that we can still continue our efforts on the media side, but when you start to put in place a jobs platform, when you start to put in place a digitalization of the taxi industry, so e-fares then persist, I think that's where the real value comes in.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds super exciting. And for our listeners and viewers who may want to reach out to you and the broader team at Sebenza, maybe they want to explore potential partnership opportunities with you, where's the best place for them to do that?
So you can go to our website, sebenza.tech. And then if you want to reach out in terms of emails, info@sebenza.taxi. And we've got a readily available team really looking for exciting opportunities and really to start the conversation with those that are interested.
Amazing. Well, Oliver, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on the podcast today. It really has been an interesting conversation, diving into not only the inner workings of Sebenza, but giving us insights into some of your partners, the Taxi Association in particular, but then also guiding us through your sort of personal journey and the lessons that you've learned along the way. So thank you so much for that.
No, thank you for having me. As I said, it's a real honor just being asked to come onto the podcast, and really appreciate you taking the time to ask the questions. I love talking about Sebenza. I love talking about the company. I love talking about my staff, and I appreciate the time, and thank you.
That's it for today's episode of the Aegance Offscript Podcast. If this conversation sparked something, a thought, a question, or a new way of seeing your own business, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment down below. We'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.